A little bit about us real quick. UT Southwestern, any Texans in the room? Woohoo! So we are a large urban academic medical center. We continue to grow. We're not only in Dallas, but we're also in Fort Worth as well. I have some Fort Worth people here. Yay. Yeah. She's proud. She's standing up for Fort Worth. We've got about 90 plus specialty clinics and primary care clinics spread throughout the DFW Metroplex. We are busy, as I'm sure all of you guys are as well. We see about 2.3 million encounters annually, and then we saw about 1.15 acute telephone or virtual encounters addressed by RNs in the last year. Where does that kind of measure for most of you guys? Is that about the same for large organizations? Give me some head nods. I see it. Thank you. I told you I'm gonna talk with you here. All right, and then lastly, we have over 600 RNs in our organization. Some of them are in formal triage roles. Some of them are just in a clinic role, but they obviously are performing triage still. So now, before I come down, I gotta switch mics. Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah. All right. Anybody that knows me knows I can't sit still for long, so I gotta come down here. So I have a prize for you guys. Raise your hand if you've been doing telephone triage, you yourself, not in a leadership capacity, for more than 5 years. 10 years. Raise them high, because I can't see all the way in the back. 12, 15, 20. I still see a couple over here. Is there any on the right? Can you see? 22. Is it just you? You still got your hand raised? I got a prize for you. Oh. Okay, 25. Telephone triage, you were the one still doing that skill. So back there, 25. Raise it high. 30. 35. 40. All right, give her a hand. We're going to give her a prize. So she gets a lovely pep talk postcards that you can pull out the postcards, and I'm going to actually pass this back because I think I get feedback if I go. Can you just pass it back all the way? I think she's in the last row. So that's awesome. 40 years of telephone triage. Has it changed a little bit? A little bit? I mean, it's changed in the last 5 years, right? All right, give me the clicker, please. Thank you. So this is a lot of what we already know, right? So telephone triage is a complex, independent nursing practice. Would you say it's high risk? Actually defined as high risk usually, right? I think that's how Rutenberg defines it. Is Carol here? Is she around? No? I think I saw her earlier. We know that we practice better and safer for our patients if we're using evidence-based information, correct? Anybody use evidence-based protocols? Schmidt-Thompson, pretty common. Okay. Again, I'm just trying to gauge my audience a little bit. Of course, we want to promote wellness. We manage chronic disease and end-of-life care, all in the telephone triage spectrum. We have to deal with state laws, federal requirements, and different state nurse practice acts. Has anybody moved from one state to the other and practiced in 2 different states with telephone triage? Did it change a lot, state to state? About the same? Okay. Anyone else? Okay. And those rules are always changing as well. And of course, we all know the last bullet point on here. It's not typically addressed in our BSN programs. Raise your hand if you got some sort of telephone triage education in your primary nursing education. Wow. We got 1. How many people would you say are in here? Over 100? 1 person in here got that much education. So now I'm going to ask you to think about the staff nurses in your clinics. What percentage of the work that they do is strictly telephone triage? And raise your hand. 25%. More? 50%. Raise them high. 75%. Is anybody more than 75%? 100%, that's all they do. Do you find it crazy that we as RNs in the ambulatory care setting are doing something almost 100% of the time but never received formal education on that particular task or skill? A lot of head nods. A lot of head nods, right? So that is the road that kind of led us to developing this position. Thank you guys for interacting. It's kind of eye-opening to think about the lack of education that we got for telephone triage. Sorry, I'm working with a busted finger, so we'll see if it works. All right, so for us, current state, or previous to this position, when we hired in new RNs, they would go to a 4-hour telephone triage course, and then we did this, right? We kicked them to the curb, said, go get validated by your preceptor, and that was it. Does anybody else have a similar model or done that in the past? Be brave, raise those hands. Yep, absolutely. And so we wanted to do better by our nurses. We owe that to them. Again, it's a high-risk situation, right? When we used to teach the 4-hour class, I would always try to explain to an inpatient nurse what it was like to triage somebody. I would say, I'm sick, how are you going to assess me? And they would start going, oh, well, I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to touch you. I'm like, no. There's a door in between us. You can't hear me, you can kind of hear me, you can't hear all the details, you can't touch me for sure. So what are you going to do? And then the light bulb goes off, and they're like, wow, that's totally different than what we used to do in the inpatient or other settings. So with this position, we wanted to have a formal and standardized orientation. We wanted to make sure, again, that we were preparing our nurses to practice safely. Has anybody ever been in a scary situation with their own telephone triage practice where you felt at risk? It's nerve-wracking, right? Absolutely. So we want to make our nurses feel safe and to not have to worry about that. We also want to develop not only more comprehensive didactic training, but training through active calls as they were happening. Because I think that's one of the only ways you can become a good telephone triage nurse is if you're actually doing it and somebody is coaching you as you're going through it. And then lastly, we wanted to further develop our DST, so decision support training. It's clicking very fast. So a couple of barriers to the development of this role and to the way things were and why they were the way things were. Again, typically there wasn't enough time for them to get the practice that they needed. Are your clinics busy? So how long is your orientation right now for your triage nurses? How long until they're practicing independently? 12 weeks, I heard? Anybody sooner than 12 weeks? 6 weeks? Yeah? And so do you think really they've developed, if they've never done telephone triage before, they're awesome rock star triage nurses? No. And so we wanted to get them more time for practice. I also talked about competency validation. It either was rushed or it wasn't done because they got thrown into staffing so quick, right? And that's scary from a compliance standpoint when you're talking about competency folders, right? Because of our high turnover, it's hard to train people to do things right when the person who is doing the training wasn't trained the right way to do it, right? And so again, we wanted to make sure we kind of broke the cycle with some of this to make sure all of our nurses were prepared adequately. Another challenge that we've had, particularly at our institution, we use Epic, we use Schmidt-Thompson protocols. The layout of it visually, people didn't like. And so I would encourage you guys, if you have that challenge as well, to partner with your IR team or your Epic team, and they can build it a little bit different. They made it look better for us, and people were more receptive to using the decision support tool after we worked with them. Provider preference, some providers don't like the protocols. And so we had to navigate that. We still navigate that. So we adopted the decision support tool in 2015, and we still don't have it right. We're still working on it. It's getting better, but every day we have to re-educate providers on the purpose of it, why we do it, and how powerful it is, and how much time it can actually free up for those providers, right? Because those nurses aren't coming to them for every little thing. All right. Any questions online yet? We're good?
Yes, we actually have one. Do you have a new grad ambulatory triage program?
So they said, do we have a new grad ambulatory triage program? We have a ambulatory residency program. And so they do go through the new program that Marianne is going to share with us, and that is a part of their residency program as a whole. So yes is the answer to that, yes. Sort of? Okay, so as we were developing the role, we wanted to first target those high turnover clinics to make sure they got the support that they needed quickly, and again, breaking that cycle.